João Batista was a man who owned everything: sports cars, an imposing mansion, and a fortune that seemed endless. But none of that mattered. Since the day he lost his only son Felipe, in a tragic accident, 5 years ago, every Sunday without fail, John visited Philip's tomb. In a quiet cemetery, surrounded by trees on the edge of town, was the only place where he allowed himself to feel the weight of your pain. On a Sunday, as John approached the tomb, with one bouquet of white lilies, Felipe's favorites, he noticed something unusual. One boy no more than 10 years old was sitting cross-legged in front of the tombstone. The boy's clothes were torn, your dirty face and your disheveled hair. He looked like a street kid, someone who lived in a vulnerable situation. John froze, squeezing the flowers harder. Who was that boy? Because he was there. The cemetery was private, and rarely unknown people appeared there. He pigoried his harsh voice, but with a touch of curiosity. "Hey boy, what are you doing here?" The boy turned, your big eyes expressing a mixture of fear and challenge. For a moment they faced each other. João tall and imposing in his well-cut suit, and the boys, small and delicate, but with a lock of resilience in their eyes. Without saying a word, the boy got up quickly and ran, disappearing in the dense forest that surrounds the cemetery. John was stunned there. He dropped the lilies and took a step forward, but the boy was gone. Your heart beats faster, not just by the sudden encounter, but by the questions that arose in your mind. Who was that boy? Because he was at Felipe's tomb. And why had he fled? That night, João couldn't sleep. The boys imaged him. Your body, your dirty clothes, the way he had looked at John, with those eyes. There was something in it, something familiar that John could not identify. He needed answers. The next morning, João called his private investigator, a man named Mark. That had helped him in countless business affairs over the years. "I need you to find someone for me," said John with a firm voice. "A boy around 10 years old. He was at my son's grave yesterday. Find out who he is and where he came from." Marcos asked no questions. He just agreed and started working. The mind of John was consumed by thoughts about the boy. He had spent years building walls around your heart, burying your pain in work and wealth. But now these walls were starting to. Marcos worked tirelessly for days, following all the leads I could find. He examined the cemetery's security footage, nearby residents interviewed, and even came into contact with local shelters and schools. John's impatience grew. He couldn't concentrate in your business meetings or in your usual routines. All he could think, it was the boy and the mystery that surrounded him. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Marcos called João with an update. "I found him," Mark said. "His name is Samuel. He lives on the streets with his mother Clara. They have been moving from one place to another, trying to stay off the radar. By what I discovered, Samuel visits the cemetery regularly. He's been doing this for months." John's heart shot. "Where they are now?" he asked in his voice. "Urgent. They are in an abandoned warehouse in the eastern part of the city," Mark replied. "It's not a safe place, João. If you want to meet them, I advise caution." John did not hesitate. He took his coat and went straight to the warehouse. While driving around town, your mind ran with questions. Because Samuel was visiting Philip's tomb. What connection one street kid could have with his son? And why was Clara hiding that whole time? When John arrived at the warehouse, was impressed by its desolation. The building was in ruins, with broken windows and walls covered in graffiti. He entered, your expensive shoes squeaking on the broken glass. The air was damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the empty space. "Hi, John," called his echoing voice. "Is there anyone there?" For a moment you hear silence, then, from the shadows, a small figure emerged. It was Samuel. The boy looked even more fragile up close. Your loose clothes on your thin body. He looked at Joao with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Who are you? Samuel asked, your voice barely above a whisper. I am John the Baptist, replied Joao, trying to keep his tone gentle. I am Felipe's father. I saw you at his grave. Can you tell me why you were there? Samuel hesitated, looking over his shoulder from the shadows. A woman approached. She was thin and tired, your face marked by difficulties. But there was a strength in his eyes, which caught John's attention. I am Clara, she said with a firm voice, but cautious. Samuel's mother. We didn't want to disturb your pain. We just needed a place to remember Joao. Frowned. Remember what? What does my son have to do with you? Clara took a deep breath, your hands shaking slightly. Philip was Samuel's brother, she said softly. The words hit Joao like a punch in the stomach. He staggered back. Your mind spinning. What are you talking about? Felipe was my only son. He had no brothers. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Felipe didn't know about Samuel, she explained. I was pregnant when he died. I never got the chance to tell him. John's world seemed to tilt. He looked at Samuel, seeing Felipe in the boy's eyes. Format. Your face was like looking at a ghost. One living memory of the son he had lost. John was paralyzed, your mind struggling to process Clara's words. Felipe had one brother, one child, this boy Samuel. It was his grandson. The weight of the revelation pressed down on him, and for a moment he felt like he couldn't breathe. Why didn't you tell me? John finally asked, your voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. All these years, I didn't know. I could have helped you. I could have been there for him. Clara looked down, your hands clasped tightly. I was scared, she admitted. After Philip died, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a family, and I didn't think you would believe me. You were so distant, even before the accident. I thought you would think I was lying, just wanting money or something. Joao's heart hurt at her words. He had been distant. He was so consumed by his work, for your empire, who had neglected his own son. And now, he was faced with the consequences of this negligence. One grandson he never knew existed, living in poverty because of your own ignorance. Samuel, who had remained silent until then, he said, you really are my grandfather? He asked in a low voice, but full of curiosity. John knelt down, standing at the boy's eye level. Yes, Samuel, he said softly. I am, and I'm sorry I didn't hear from you sooner. Samuel watched him for a moment, and then he felt it slowly. All good, he said. My mom said you didn't know. But will you help us now? John's eyes filled with tears, extended the hand and placed it gently on Samuel's shoulder. Yes, Samuel, I will help you both. You don't have to live like this anymore. Clara approached, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. John the First don't want your money, she said firmly. I just want Samuel to have a better life. He deserves this, and he will have, replied Joao, standing up. But not just because of the money, because he's family, and the family takes care of each other. In the following days, Joao arranged for Clara and Samuel, if they moved to a small apartment, more comfortable near your home. He hired a private tutor for Samuel, and helped Clara find a stable job. But most importantly, he spent time with them, meeting Samuel, learning about Clara's difficulties and slowly building a relationship with family that he never knew he had. In one night, while they were sitting together in the apartment, Samuel looked at Joao with a shy smile. Grandpa, can you tell me about my father? My mother said he was very brave. John's heart was filled with emotion. He felt her, and began sharing stories about Felipe, his laugh, your kindness, your dreams. While speaking, realized that this was what he was wasting all these years. There is no wealth or success, but the connection. Love, the feeling of belonging. As the days turned into weeks, Joao's life began to change in ways that I didn't imagine. He started spending less time in his office, and more time with Samuel and Clara. He took Samuel to the park, helped him with his studies, even taught him how to ride a bike. For the first time in years, Joao felt alive, as if he had a purpose beyond his own business empire. Clear, however, was still cautious. She appreciated John's help, but distrusted his wealth and influence. She had spent years struggling to support Samuel, and the idea of depending on someone else, especially someone as powerful as John, made her restless. In one afternoon, while they were sitting in the apartment, Clara finally expressed her concerns. "Joao, I'm grateful for everything you did for us," she said carefully. "But I need to know what happens next. We are just a project for you. Something to make you feel better about the past." Joao was taken by surprise by her question. He was so focused on making up for lost time, who had not considered how his actions might be perceived. "Clara, this isn't just your fault," he said sincerely. "Samuel is my grandson. You are my family. I want to be part of yours lives just now, but forever." Clara watched him for a moment, and then he felt it slowly. "I believe in you," she said, "but it will take time for all of us." John understood. He knew that trust couldn't be bought or rushed. It had to be conquered one small step at a time. About that, Samuel was thriving. He loved spending time with his grandfather, and was eager to learn everything. What could he do about his father? One day, while they were sitting together in John's office, Samuel asked a question that caught Joao by surprise. "Grandpa, why didn't you and Daddy get along?" Samuel asked innocently. John sighed, his heart heavy with regret. "I made a lot of mistakes." Samuel admitted it. "I was so focused on my work that I didn't make time for your father. I thought I was doing what was best for him, but I was wrong. I didn't realize how much he needed me until it was too late." Samuel thought about it for a moment and then said, "But you are here now. That's what matters, right?" John smiled, your eyes filling with tears. "Yes, Samuel, that's what matters." As the weeks pass, John began to see the world through Samuel's eyes. He noticed the little things, the way Samuel's face lit up when he learned something new, the way he laughed when they played together, the way he looked at John with confidence and affection. It was a reminder of what he had lost with Felipe, but also a chance to make things right. In one night, while sitting together on the porch, watching the sunset, Samuel turned to John and said, "Grandpa, do you think Daddy would be proud of us?" John's heart was filled with emotion. He put an arm around Samuel's shoulders and pulled him close. "I think he would be very proud, Samuel. And I think he's watching over us smiling." As the months went by, John, Clara and Samuel have settled into a new rhythm. The anti-lonely billionaire. Now he found joy in the simplest moments. Breakfasts with Samuel, quiet conversations with Clara, and the shared laughter that filled their home. For the first time in years, Joao felt part of a family. But not everything was easy. Clara still struggled to trust Joao completely. She had spent so many years counting only on yourself that it was difficult to let someone else in. In one night, after Samuel went to bed, Clara sat with Joao in the living room. "I need to be honest with you," she said with a firm voice, but with a touch of vulnerability. "I'm still scared, afraid that one day you will wake up and realize this is not what you want, that we are too much for you." John looked at her, your soft expression more serious. "Clara, I understand why you feel like this. I made mistakes in the past and I can't change that. But I want let you know I'm here for you and Samuel, not out of obligation, but because I care about you too. You are my family." Clara felt it, your eyes shining with unshed tears. "I want to believe that, John. I really want. But it's hard to let the fear go." "Take as much time as you need," said John gently. "I'm not going anywhere. Their conversation marked a turning point. Slowly, but safely, Clara started to open up more, sharing her hopes and fears with João. She told him about her difficulties as a mother, single, the nights he spent without food so that Samuel could eat, and the constant fear of losing him. John heard his broken heart, for everything she had endured. "You are incredibly strong, Clara," he said one night, "stronger than anyone I've ever met. And I'm sorry that you went through all this alone." Clara smiled weakly. "I wasn't alone. I had Samuel. He was always my reason to carry on." John reached out and took her hand. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." About that, Samuel continued to flourish. He excelled at school, made friends, and even joined a football team. João made a point of attending all the games, cheering loudly from the sidelines after a particularly exciting match. Samuel ran to John, your face shining with pride. "Did you see my goal, Grandpa?" he asked breathlessly. João smiled and ruffled Samuel's hair. "I saw you. It was amazing there. Your father would have been so proud." Samuel smiled, then hesitated for a moment. "Grandpa, do you think maybe one day we could visit Daddy's grave together? I want to tell him everything." John's heart was filled with emotion. "Of course, Samuel. I think it's a great idea." The following Sunday, Clara and Samuel visited Felipe's tomb together. It was a sunny and cool morning, and the cemetery was silent, except for the leaves blowing in the wind. João carried a bouquet of white lilies, while Samuel held a small drawing. What I had done. A photo of him, of his mother and João together under a rainbow. As they approached the tomb, John felt a lump form in his throat. He hasn't been there with anyone since Philip's funeral. See Samuel and Clara by your side made the moment feel bittersweet and healing. Samuel knelt in front of the tombstone and carefully placed her drawing next to her. "Hi, Dad," he said softly. "It's me, Samuel. I wish I had met you, but Grandpa has been telling me all about you. He said you were very brave and kind. I hope I can be like you someday." John placed his hand on Samuel's shoulder, your eyes filling with tears. "He would be very proud of you, Samuel, just like I am." Clara stood silently beside them, arms around herself. After a moment, she walked over and placed her hand on the tombstone. "Felipe," she whispered, "I wish you could see how your son has grown. He looks so much like you, and I wish you could see how your father has changed. He was there for us in ways I never thought that were possible. I think you would be proud of him too." John's breath hitched at her words. He had spent so many years carrying the weight of your regrets, but at that moment, felt a sense of peace that I didn't know for a long time. He knelt down beside Samuel and placed the lilies on the tomb. "Philip," he said with a trembling voice, "I'm sorry for all the time I wasted. I wish I could go back and do things differently. But I promise you that I will take care of Samuel and Clara. I will be the father and grandfather they deserve. And I'll make sure Samuel knows how much you loved him, even if you never had the chance to meet him." Three stayed there for a while, sharing stories about Felipe and reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. For the first time, John felt that was truly honoring his son's memory, not just visiting his grave, but building a future with family that Felipe had left behind. As they walked back to the car, Samuel took John's hand. "Grandpa," said he, "do you think Daddy can hear us when we talk to him?" John smiled at him. "I think he can, Samuel, and I think he is always with us." That he placed his hand over his heart. Samuel felt her thoughtfully. "So I'm going to talk to him every day, to let him know that I'm okay." John's eyes filled with tears again. "It's a great idea, Samuel. He would love that." Months turned into a year, and the bond between João, Clara, and Samuel got stronger every day. João had sold his mansion and moved to a smaller, more welcoming house, closer to Clara and Samuel's apartment. He wanted to be close to them, be a constant presence in their lives. His priorities had completely changed, no longer driven by wealth or power, but for love and connection that he had found with his family. In one night, while they were sitting together in the living room, Clara turned to João with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," she said. "Samuel deserves more stability, one real home, and I think we're all ready for it." John looked at her, your heart filling with hope. "You're saying what I think you're saying." Clara smiled. "Yes. I think it's time for us to live together like family." Samuel, who was drawing silently at the table, looked up with wide eyes. "Seriously, let's live together." João laughs. The sound is warm and full of joy. "If that's what you want, Samuel, we can find a home, with a big yard for you to play, maybe even get a dog." Samuel's face lit up. "A serious dog. We can call him Felipe." John's eyes softened. "It's a wonderful idea, Samuel. I think Felipe would love that." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activities. They found one spacious house, but cozy, with one large yard, exactly as John had promised on the day of the move. While unpacking boxes and settled into their new home, John felt a sense of accomplishment that I had never met before. This wasn't just a house. It was a home full of love and the promise of a brighter future. That night, while they were sitting together in the yard, under a sky full of stars, Samuel turned to John. "Grandpa," said he, "do you think Daddy is watching us now?" John looked at the stars, one smile pulling your lips. "I know he's Samuel, and I think he's happy. Happy to be together. Glad you are safe and loved." Clara reached out and took João's hand, your eyes shining with gratitude. "Thanks," she said softly, "for giving us this chance, for giving Samuel the life he deserves." John pressed her hand. "Thank you, Clara, for trusting me, for letting me be part of your lives." While they were sitting there, surrounded by the tranquil beauty of the night, João realized that he had finally found what I was looking for so long. Not wealth, not success, but love. The kind of love that heals, that transforms, that makes life worth living. And when looking at Samuel, your grandson, and Clara, the woman who had become like a daughter to him, John knew this was just the beginning. Together they would build a future full of hope, laughter, and infinite possibilities.